But I'd like to welcome everybody, and especially our guest tonight, Patty Hightower, Escambia School Board, District 4, thank you, and Michelle Salzman, who's our state representative for District 1. And Vicki Campbell is en route. She's ECUA District 1 also. So I had the pleasure of working on 2 of Vicki's campaigns, and I know firsthand that she loves campaigning and she loves canvassing. So we wore out lots of shoes, and as all of you know in this room, campaigning in August is just so fun here in Florida. So you have to wear lots of cotton and linen and keep ice cold bottled water in the car. So when we thought about putting this together, and we had done this previously pre-COVID, we had a larger audience, and we had each of the ladies talk about how they decided to run and what the big challenges were, and were they concerned at all about running. But what we found previously was that what really draws women to run for office is a mission, or there's something that's just not right in their district. And so they have passion for whatever that is. So I'd like to ask Patty, this is your 16th year in office?
Yes, excuse me, yes, I just got elected to my 5th term.
And are they 2-year terms or 4?
4.
4.
Yeah. And yes, that you're right. It is a mission field, and for most of us, I felt like I could make a difference. Probably some of you in the room might remember I first was elected in 2004, and we'd had some rather tumultuous years preceding 2004. We had school board members that thought they were superintendents, and we had, and unfortunately, many times our school board and superintendent would wind up above the fold in the news journal back when you got the paper, and not for positive reasons. And so I've spent my life in education. I got a degree in education. I have a bachelor's and a master's. I've taught in Alabama, Texas, and Georgia. And then I got here and I started working with PTA, and that's where I really got involved in the educational process. You know, as teacher in the classroom, you're mostly concerned with what the kids are doing in front of you. But I just felt like we were in a community where there was a lack of civility in the schools, and I didn't think that was a good image to set in front of our students, and it wasn't a good place to work with such a toxic environment. There was a lot of mistrust, and so that was why I decided that. I thought I had just come off of my presidency of the Florida PTA, and thought, so now what? I had a job at the time too. I was the program coordinator for Take Stock in Children. If you're not aware, it's a scholarship program for students that are at need. And so, you know, I just felt like this was a good opportunity. I didn't have any qualms with the person serving in the seat that I was trying to get. People would say, why are you running against him? And I'd say, I'm not running against him. I'm running for the position because I think I can make a difference.
That's terrific. And so your first time out, how much did you win by?
There were 4 of us in the race, me and 3 men. And one at the primary was 63% of the vote.
Oh, well done. And that's difficult to do when there are multiple candidates.
And one's an incumbent.
Well, especially the incumbent, but that's really great. So, Michelle, how did you decide to run?
How am I supposed to follow that?
Okay, well, first of all, this is your first term, and you beat someone that had a lot of name ID, so why don't you share some details?
Oh, sure. Well, I think that Patty was one of the first people I called when I was considering running. And to be honest, I was kind of in the same position Patty was. I had met several accomplishments and all education based. And I thought, well, what do I do now? And I pondered the idea of getting a full-time job and stopping doing philanthropy altogether. And about that time was when the paper front paged some comments at a meeting about killing other people. And it just reminded me of why I get so frustrated at leaders in the first place. I won't say anything for or against those comments that were made or that person, but I just feel like the world needs more humanity in it and less agitation and just aggressiveness. And so I put that in the back of my head. I thought, wow, that's horrible. What a horrible representative. And so moving forward, I was on the phone with a friend driving down 9 Mile Road, taking my son to the hospital, and it was traffic backed up forever. And I was like, I am so sick of this stupid road. Like, who is not fixing this road? And the person on the other end said, well, that's, And I said, okay, that's it. I'm running. I got to fix this. I'm so over it. I'm just over it. This road should have been fixed by now, blah, blah, blah. I'll take his job. And they were really excited because they were like, yeah, you really should do that. And I just started looking at the bills and just looking at the position. What is even a state representative? And the more I looked at it, the more I thought, we're not doing this right at all. I feel like a state representative should be a conduit, a connector of local government to state government, of constituent to leaders, just a conduit altogether, and we did not have that. And so looked at all the bills, noticed that none of them have ever been heard in committee, and I was like, well, gosh, your voice isn't even being heard. Not only are you not passing anything, but you're not even sharing the message for your constituents because they don't even want to hear your stuff. And so that was really what made me decide to do it. And I just started calling people saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts? Do you think I'd be any good at this? And a lot of them were like, I didn't even know you were a Republican. True story. But I embrace everybody. I think that we can sit at the same table together and have completely different opinions and still be able to come to an agreement on something. For instance, when the state PTA was doing they were pushing a lot of agendas that I just knew that my constituents as a leader, not even as an elected official, wouldn't agree with. We found common ground in cybersecurity training, and we won state awards, and we even got nationally recognized because I said, okay, well, what can we do? PTA certainly encourages cybersecurity and awareness to protect your children, and our school district is not doing this yet, so this was a good way. So it's kind of one of those things. You can find common ground and work together without being divisive. So that was my why. And then I got told that it was impossible. You can't unseat an incumbent. There's over $1 million in name recognition, and he's very loved. And I said, wow, well, I guess I have a lot of work to do. So, and he is. And the guy that I unseated has a great passion for a lot of things, and I think that passion is very well used, but just not as a state representative. So I'm grateful for his passion and the things that he wants, but certainly we needed somebody that would get it done. And my first year has been 100% successful. I mean, we got everything done that we ever wanted to get done in the past 5 or 6 years, all in 1 year. And I joked with Senator Broxson, who is a dear friend. I said, Doug, I don't even know what I'm going to do now. I did it all. He thought that was funny. He said, Michelle, you gonna find something to do. But we have Vicki came in the room. I'd love to have her. Vicki, we're saying why we ran for office the first time. For me, it's the only time. And then so far, and depending, and what drives that passion. So without further ado, I'd love to pass it to my Vicki.
Welcome. We did share that
Apologize for being late.
ECUA kept you
I
busy.
had a board meeting, and it was a very long board meeting. And so why I chose to run Well, I think if anybody that knows me knows I'm very passionate about the west side of Pensacola. I was born and raised on the west side of Pensacola, and I've been serving the west side of Pensacola my entire life in one capacity or another. At the time I was decided to run for ECOA, I was sitting on the State of Florida Board of Dentistry. People say, what? But I was a consumer member, so that meant I was for the people, not the doctors. Somebody said one time, you were for the doctors. I was like, no, I was the one taking their license away, not the one giving it to them. But I enjoyed that, and my passion there was probably access to care for the elderly and the poor. And there was a movement afoot to take the fluoride out of the water. And enough people did that in Pinellas County that they took it out. And I knew what that would mean to Escambia County, because we're not the richest county in the state. And it would mean our hospitals would be full of the elderly and the poor with dental issues. And we have enough issues as it is. We don't need to fill up our hospitals even more. So that was one of my reasons to run. And then, there were several other reasons. Some of the reasons I found out weren't so right. Once you get into office, you think, I would change this, and I would change that, and I would change this, and I would change that. And then you find out, well, maybe I wouldn't change that. One of the things was, lower rate hikes. Everybody says, oh, lower rate hikes, lower rate hikes. Well, we have lowered our water rate hikes since I've been on the board. They were going to 8 to 9, 10%. They have not been over CPI since I got on the board, because I think that is not good. But there was no money being spent towards planning for the ECUA was under a consent order. And so we addressed that my first year on the board by doing a 16-year plan of reparation. That 16-year plan created a CPI fee, the capital improvement fee, which will end in 2029 if we finish our 16-year plan. And holding our feet to the fire is DEP. And if we didn't do that plan and we didn't repair the infrastructure, DEP would have come in and done it for us. So your rates would have gone up 3 times as much. So even though I say I don't want to ever raise a rate, DEP making you repair the infrastructure made you have to raise the rate. So, there's a lot of things that you learn once you get there that you can't do. Accountability was one of those things, accountability and communication. And since I've come on the board, we have live stream board meetings. We didn't have those before. We even have social media. That was a big push, believe it or not. Nobody wanted to have it. I thought we needed it because we have a lot of messages that need to go out that weren't going out, because as much as I come to these things and speak, you can see how many people show up to all these things. And who wants to go talk about garbage? I like to talk trash, but nobody else does. I love to talk trash, but not a lot of people like to talk trash. So for me to get my message out, I needed more than just my 3,000. And before I became an elected official, I might have had 1,000 friends, but that's because I was a coach for 12 years and, politically active and active in the community. Now I have where do these people come from? They want to be your friends. All of a sudden you have 3,000. But 3,000 is still nothing compared to who needs to have the message not to pour milk down the drain. So I go out to events and speak and whatever. And so when I walked into a room the first year in office, and I would say to people, what's the worst thing you can pour down your drain? And they would all say, well, I don't know. I don't know. And I would say, one of the worst things you can pour down your drain is milk. And they were like, what?
I like white wine.
So milk coagulates just like it's a fat. It's nothing but a grease. It's a fat, it's a fat, oil, or grease.
So where do you pour it?
I give mine to my pups. When I get finished with my cereal in the morning, my dogs love me. And I give it to them. Now, I hear people pour it on their plants because it's good for plants. But don't put it down your drain. Don't put... See? So education is my big thing. I want to educate everybody on what to do. Don't put coffee grounds down your sink. I didn't know that. Don't put milk down your drain, one of my biggest things, and I think everybody knows me for at ECUA, was recycle. I wanted us to recycle and recycle right. We built a regional facility that opened in 2016. They said it couldn't be done, but we did it anyway. And the thing that makes our recycle so successful when others are not is that our recycle is voluntary. So if you don't want to recycle, I don't care. I don't want you to recycle. Because here's what happens when you recycle and you don't want to. You put the wrong thing in the garbage. You put the wrong thing in the can. Well, that's called contamination, and that cost us even more money. So recycle is not just because it feels good, because it does feel good to everybody, especially women, it feels good, but recycle is a cost avoidance. That's all it is. It's a cost avoidance, because everything you recycle, you don't have to put in the landfill. So number one, it saves $45 a ton that it costs to landfill, so that's money saved on your bill. Number two, the life of that landfill is 100 years. That was a 100-year landfill when they built it. They built it a long time ago. How many people did we have here? Not even close to how many people we're going to have here in 5 or 10 years. So that landfill is getting filled up a lot quicker than 100 years. It's the tallest thing you see when you come across our state line. And I think landfills at sometime in the future will be a thing of the past. Not right now, but we still have to have a landfill, but let's keep the life of that landfill longer. So that also does that. What else? Other thing we did, compost. It's another cost avoidance. Compost, we used to bury all your yard waste at the landfill. Well, now we take all of that yard waste, mix it with the sludge from the sewer treatment plant, which used to cost $1 million to dry. Now we don't have to. Mix it with this and put it in these rows. It has to get up to 145 degrees to cook, We put an inoculant on top. I can't tell you what the secret sauce is because it's, like a secret sauce. But
I don't think anybody really wants to know.
But anyway, it's bugs, and it eats all the germs away. It eats everything away. And we turn it into a compost, and we cannot sell that compost quick enough. Everybody wants it. Everybody. We make it so we make it, and we can't make it fast enough. But those are just a few of the things that we've accomplished since I've been there. Do I have another question? Technology. Tell me a government that is ahead of the curve on technology, and I'll move there, because no government is ahead of the curve on technology, and ECUA is not an exception. They were so behind the curve, it was pitiful. But the board has, I'll tell you who was really in charge in moving that was Elvin McCorvey. Does everybody remember Mr. McCorvey? He was in District 3. He pushed very hard for that, and so did I. And it was $500,000 to upgrade the technology at ECUA. So that's another big push, and it should be finished this year. So if you don't have the Recycle, I promise this, if you don't have the Recycle Coach app, that's what it looks like. It's green. I'm sorry, I don't have a color printer. My company is paperless. But this is a little app, and if you put it on your phone, you can push a button, and we will now know that we missed your garbage. So you don't have to pick up the phone and say, you missed my garbage 5 times. You just push the button, and we know you missed your garbage. And then there's also an ECUA alert, and this you can sign up on the website, use your cell phone, not your house phone. A lot of people, when they got their initial account, signed up with their home phone. And I'm one of those people that still have a home phone, but I can't tell you the last time I answered it was probably 5 years ago. So I had to make sure I went in, and if you haven't done this, go in and make sure you have changed now to your cell phone at your ECUA account. And if something happens with the water and you need to know about it, we will text you. So
That's great.
that's just a few of the things that we have done.
We're going to do the next question, but thank you. I will also say that I know Vicki worked so hard on the recycling center, and she worked even harder for money for education, so we can get kids excited about it and teach adults not to put their milk down the drain, which I didn't know either.
And the funny thing is, when they finally got the recycle center finished, and I mean, the plans and everything, they wanted everybody to vote, and me, the one that pushed it the most, said, I can't vote for this. And they said, why? And I said, well, you promised me an educational component, and there's not one. And they said, well, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm not voting on it. So they went back and added the educational component to it.
So see, never say never. What I'd like to talk about now is when you, and we talked a little bit about this informally in the other area, but I'd really like to hear more about, you were angry about traffic, you were angry about the issues, school, education, those kind of things. How did you, Michelle talked a little bit about this, but what did you do to see if you thought other people would support you in running the first time? So we can start again with Patty.
Well, Vicki's got the money.
We're going to let Vicki take a breath.
Yeah, it was one of those things that I really had never considered, but I'd had different people in the community, as Michelle talked about, mention when all of this was going on, that maybe that was something I should consider. And one of the first things I did was have a conversation with my husband. Because as we were discussing, it's not just you that runs for office, it's your family and friends. And so when he gave the okay, and I talked to the boys, I have 2 boys that were at home at that time, and they said, well, what do we have to do? And yeah,
That's right.
yeah. And then I pulled a group of my friends together, people from different things that I did, and they were from different places in my life, you know, and I sat down and I said, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? You know, and so they said, well, of course. Everything you've ever done was about education. It's a perfect fit. And then you go about the process of going around to different leaders in the community and having conversations with those people that you think would be good people to get the word out that you're running for office and might actually be able to support you. I will share with you that I was not as successful with that because many of them said, well, you know, we've always been a supporter of your opponent, and he did this for me, or he did that for me, and but we'll support you if you get past primary. And I said, it'll be too late.
Yeah, I need you now.
Well, I said, you know, I'm going to win in the primary, so it'll be it. But I wasn't really that confident. But I think, you know, you've got to marshal a group of people that will have your back, that are willing to walk the streets with you in 120-degree weather. One of my dear friends was walking with me one July day, and she said, this guy just said he'd vote for you. Anybody has a friend that will walk with you in this kind of heat deserves my vote. So, I mean, those are the kind of people that you've got to have at your back. You can't do it by yourself. And so you have to have those people. Many of you may remember my school bus. When I ran the first time, we bought a surplus school bus. And my Sunday school class, I taught senior high Sunday school, and they came over and they decorated it for me, and we had Vote Patty on it, and you get your website going and your donation sites, and my husband, talk about dedication, got his CDL license, because even if you aren't driving people on the bus, you cannot drive it without a CDL. And so we would walk a neighborhood and he'd drive the neighborhood and we'd have to get on our cell phones and say, don't come down this road, you can't turn around. You know, so, I mean, but people to this day will say, oh, you're the one that had the school bus. And so, you know, I think that's what it takes, a whole group of people having that kind of power and empowering you. You know, and the other thing, you have to have this long conversation with yourself. How how will I feel if I don't win? You know, you may have been successful, but if you don't win, does that mean nobody likes me and I have to go home? Or does that just mean that you're going to move on to another thing? But I think that's something that some people forget when they're in this process. You have to weigh all sides, and you have to be strong enough to know that if you don't win, it's not really personal. It was some idea out there that they believed the other person was more in tune with what they thought. So I think that's an important thing for people to think, because I've heard people after they've lost elections, whether they be state elections or just running for PTA president, that get this, well, you know, I'm just a failure because I didn't win. So that's one thing I want to keep it.
Can you repeat the question? So I know exactly what I'm supposed to answer.
Well, we talked a little bit about when you have this conversation with yourself or something's annoying you and you looked and you did the research on the bills and said nothing's being done for the panhandle, I'm going to change that.
Right.
What were your next steps to figure out, because everyone will say, oh, you should run and we'll help you. But there's so much more to it, and what does help really mean?
Right. Well, I had never ran for office before, so I didn't really know how any of it worked. I'm kind of naive, which was great for me, because I have friends that apparently are very political, and I didn't even know they were political. I just knew they were my friends. And so, I mean, one being Malcolm. I went to Malcolm Thomas. We sat down. He blocked out like 3 hours with me. I sat down and I was like, I think I'm going to run for office. And he was like, oh, really? And anyway, he's like, well, did you ask this person if they were okay with that? And did you ask that person if they were okay? And what do these people think? And blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but why does any of that matter? And he said, well, these people, you know, that they're the ones that put the money into it. They're the ones that invest in the races. The politics is a whole world, you know, and you have to be indoctrinated into that world in some way or another. And if they don't give you the support that you need, then you won't be successful. They really do run the show. And I said, well, okay, well, who are these people? And he started naming these names. I was like, oh, those are my friends. And he was like, yeah. Now go ask them what they think. And he was the first person to tell me that he had no doubt that I could win. He said, I would tell normally, I'd say nobody can win this race, but Michelle, if anybody could win, it's going to be you. And I think that conversations like that are what really empowers anybody, whether it be a woman or a man running. Are people, when you talk to somebody like Malcolm Thomas, who had an approval rating, which I actually knew what that was with him, was really high. I mean, the man was loved. And if he says, you know, that I had an opportunity, I have a chance to win, then I was like, that's it. If he says I have a chance, then I must, because that man will tell me I'm wrong in a heartbeat. He still does to this day. And so I just took that and I took the list of names that he gave me. And one of them, he said, was Matt Gaetz. And so I called Matt and I was like, hey, I'm thinking of running for office and I was told to call you. And he said, oh, well, you know, and an hour later I had like 5 or 6 pages of notes of things he told me to do to be successful. And I think that the important thing, the takeaway from this question is you don't just ask 20 of your closest friends. They need to be people of influence in the circle in which you're trying to run, because those are the ones that have been around for a long period. I met with Vicki. We met was it a Target coffee shop? I mean, Jim Reeves said, if you don't have Vicki, you're not going to win. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know this Vicki lady, but okay, Jim, I know you. So, I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of matriarchs, you know, a lot of really successful women in this community. And you don't even know what their fingers or hands are in, what pots they're in, until you have to ask about it. Because Patty's not going to flaunt all of her relationships that she has, but she is a huge, I mean, I talked to her several times when I was campaigning. Hey, Patty, what do you think about this? And this is my money that I'm getting. And I do remember her saying, I've never gotten checks that big what, 20,000, what? And I was like, oh yeah, no problem, I can get that. But state is different as far as the level of dollars raised, but it's the same concept. You need to ask people that are influential in the circles in which you are trying to influence yourself. And if those people are, continuously saying that you are a good person for that, whether or not they say you can, because Malcolm was one of like 2 that said I could win. I think Frank White said, he knew my work ethic. We actually worked together in the civilian world for several years, so he knew me. He knew me. And he was like, well, Michelle, if anybody can win, it'll be you. I heard that a lot. If anybody could, it's you. But it's so important. When you agree, Vicki, I mean, really, you got to have, you can't just ask your closest friends. And she was in education, so the people she was asking were exactly who she needed to ask. And several of them said, yeah, no, oh, no. And several people were like Louis Bear, for instance, Louis and Bell, and I've known them for many years. I went over their house and we were chatting and I was like, I'm running Bravo. And they were like, oh, no, you're not. And I was like, yes, I am. And I was told that I need to talk to y'all about this. And I don't even know why I need to talk to y'all about this. What about that fundraiser we're doing next week? And they were like, no, Michelle. They got very serious. Bell was so sweet. And Louis was like, you'll never win. You're going to get drawn through the mud. They're going to treat you like dirt. We love you, and we don't want you to be embarrassed the way you will be embarrassed. We don't want you to feel the defeat that you will feel. We really, really, really do not, as a friend, because they were true friends, they really did not want me to get in the race. And they really didn't want me to talk about local politics. They said, stay out of all of that stuff. Just you're doing great in the community. Just stay that way. And I said, I appreciate that, but I'm running for office. And they were like, okay, here's a blank check. So, they're still supporting me to this day, whether we agree or disagree. Having a seat at the table is always important. So I hope I haven't rambled, but it's really important to have the right people be asked, not just people. And I learned that so quickly. If I didn't have such great mentors in my life, like the Pattys and the Malcolms and Frank Whites and all of those, then I wouldn't have made the right steps. Quint Studer, Quint was not politically engaged ever until I went into his office and said, I think I'm running for this state representative job. And he was like, no, you should do school board. And I said, no, I'm not trying to unseat an incumbent. And he said, but that's what you're trying to do. I know it's funny, but I didn't consider him an incumbent. I considered him just ineffective, and nothing against him personally. So I think that just having that coalition of people is so critical, and asking them, telling them your why. And by the way, you got to get that down. You got to know why you're running, and you got to be able to say it in a way that people are like, oh, okay. I'll tell you, here's another Louis story. It's so fun to say when he's wrong because he's always right. He said, well, what are you going to run on? And I was like, safety and infrastructure and education. We need better education opportunity. He said, nobody's voting for that. And first of all, he's right. Let's face it. If education was that sexy, we'd have the best education system everywhere. But we don't. If garbage was sexy, although believe it or not, we have some of the best rates in the state. I'm learning, Vicki, I'm learning. I'm the first to say when I'm wrong. So you really do need to have that stump speech, that why created, and you have to be able to speak to it. And it has to be able to resonate with the people you're talking to. So if they feel your passion, even if they don't believe you, they'll support you. Like Lewis was like, there's no way you're going to win off a boring old 9-mile road. And I was like, I'm doing it. If I have to talk to every single voter in Pensacola. And he was like, well, you're going to have to. And he's right, I did. I knocked on 14,000 doors, and we did a lot of events. But I just want to say, how do you like 9-Mile Road? That's right, you're welcome. How do you like Highway 29? That's right, you're welcome. And guess what's happening in the next month? They will start work on that W Street turnoff of Highway 29. I talked to DOT this week, so that'll be fixed. I don't know if y'all have ever turned that right. Oh my gosh, it won't be awful for long. So have your why ready to go, and it has to resonate with the people that you're talking to. And If you're not ready to work, don't even do it, just period. I think you got to work. You have to work. Don't put your name on the ballot and go, I put my name on the ballot, give me some money. People have come to me and said that so many times. I'm like, how many doors have you knocked? Like, don't talk to me. When I had lined up, I had talked to Lewis before I even filed. I talked to Malcolm. I talked to Patty. I talked to Frank. I talked to Quint and several others, and Vicki. And all of them, I had it all lined up, and all of them said, we'll give to you. We'll be happy to give you. And I told them all, I don't want your money yet. Let me go earn it. Let me go knock these doors. Let me make sure that I'm invested before I ask you to invest. And most people wouldn't do that. Matter of fact, I got shunned by several strategists going, well, you should have taken a check. I don't need a check. I need to go talk to these voters. I've got to practice my messaging. I got to make sure that Lewis isn't right. I got to make sure that Quint's not right. All these people, Malcolm, they all had input. I need to know what I'm really doing before I get them to give me money to do it. So I'm a little unorthodox. I didn't take money until 6 months into campaigning. And then we brought the house down. Money just flowed in like nobody's business, which we knew it would happen. So, but I just think that you need to have your stump speech down, and it's not even a speech at the time that you're meeting with people the first time. It's really just you're talking through it yourself. But if you're truly passionate about it, they're going to see that, and they're going to want to support you if they believe in you. And if the leaders of that circle don't believe in you, then maybe you should run for something else if you're really passionate about running. And with that, I'll hand the microphone to Vicki.
Well, first person you talk to is your family. I'll agree with that. I wouldn't even run until my son went to college because I didn't want to drag him through that. But my husband is very non-political. So Deb was my date a lot of nights when we would go to things. Or, I'd grab a friend when we would go to things because he just didn't want to do that. That wasn't his thing. Now, if I insisted and said, I have to have you this night, be with me, he would go, but he's just not into politics. He doesn't drink, number one, so anything where there was drinking involved, he wasn't going. So, and I'll say that I kind of went about it a little bit different. I wanted to know what the other board members thought were issues. So the first people I met with were the other 5 board members. I asked all of them, and only the 4 met with me. The one I was running against, she didn't want to talk to me. Her name was Campbell as well, which was very weird. Campbell ran against Campbell. But I talked to the other 4 board members because I wanted to know, now you can talk to them because you're not under sunshine law. I wanted to know what are their issues. What do you have the most problem with? How do you handle this? How do you handle that? What does this mean? What does that mean? Then I met with every department head at the ECUA, every single department head. I met with the head of the finance committee, met with the head engineer, met with the head of sanitation. I met with the head of the wastewater treatment plant. And so I wanted to know what they thought their issues were and how they felt about the other board members. I mean, these are things you can do before you're in office and you can't do after you're in office. So I wanted to do all of that ahead of time. And so I spent a lot of time at the ECUA. I went to board meetings because we didn't have live stream board meetings, so I had to actually go. So I went to board meetings. I met with staff. Then I met, money was not really a big a deal as it was for most people for me because I've had my hand out to people my whole life. I've been on nonprofit boards my whole life. I coach little girls softball. No, I don't have a little girl, but I was a very good softball player for 30 years. So then I coached little girls softball for 12 years. A friend of mine's wife left him with 2 girls. He didn't have anybody to help him coach, so I helped him coach, and I got stuck. If you do something like that, you get stuck. I served on the PTA, the PTSA. I was a student advisor for West Florida High School when my son was there. I even served on the quarterback club when my son played football there. So I was very familiar with all the people at his high school, at all of his schools. And so me reaching out for money was no It was like, people already ducked when they saw me coming because they knew I was going to be asking for a check for something. So I was pretty good at asking for money. So that was the probably easiest thing for me to do, was to ask for money. The hardest thing for me to do was to not get upset about the negative, because people really talk negative about you. You'd think that'd be easy for me. I was born redheaded, freckle-faced, and chubby. You would think I wouldn't get upset because I've been picked on since I was in the 2nd grade. But that part of it, the dirty part of politics, is the only part that I hate. I love walking door to door more than anybody on the campaign trail. I walk to 10,000 homes, and I'm only serving one district. But I just love talking to people. Obviously, I keep this microphone longer than anybody else. But I do love talking to people, so that's not a problem. I do know the issues. That was never a problem. Raising money was not a problem. But the dirty side of politics is still my problem after all this time. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. As a matter of fact, I told Alan McMillan came to see me. He was running for County Commission for District 2. I love Alan. Nice guy. Lives across the street from my best friend. And he said, will you support me? And I said, well, I can't support you, but I'll stay out of your race as long as you keep everything nice and not dirty. Well, his campaign team went dirty. Not him, but his campaign team did. And so I just went to the other guy and asked for a T-shirt, because I just can't do that. And they went negative against normal people. You know what I mean? It wasn't him, it wasn't Alan, but I guess it was whoever was running things for him. And they went negative against somebody that was his supporter. And I thought, well, now that should be off limits. So I would say to you, it's very distasteful when you're running to run a negative campaign. Run on the issues. Run on the good side. People, that doesn't resonate with people anyway. If you start talking bad, if that's your way to campaign, talking negative about the person you run against, you're probably not going to win. Michelle never talked negative about her, and I've never heard Patty say a negative word in my life. And so you don't.
Talk to my husband.
Oh, well, you don't have to go negative, and women are voters, and they don't like that, so they won't vote for you if you go negative. So don't go negative. Talk about what you're going to do, what's passionate to you, and then don't be afraid to ask for money. It's not a big deal.
I like asking for money.
Since we've had this quite candid conversation, which I think is always so valuable to everybody, and you all had success using different venues and avenues, what I'd like to talk about now, I'm switching this just a little bit because this room should be full. So how do we get younger women attracted to making a difference? And I get that, the normal of having babies, raising children, supporting your husband, PTA, those are all things that normally, but it really seems on the heels of COVID that things that normally we would have a decent crowd at were not. But as you all know, and everyone in this room knows, we're 51, almost 52% of the population, and our numbers are certainly not reflected in people and policy making decisions. So,
I'll give this to you because you were talking about this when we were sitting out front.
What'd I say?
You were talking about how hard it was for women.
Maybe I'll let Patty tell me what I said. I think that women are territorial, and we respect the territory of other women and other families because we can certainly relate when we feel like others are imposing on our space. And when you have something as public as a political office, it makes it quite difficult for someone that respects others' territories / space to want to enter that. Especially when you have the network like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I went to Malcolm, he said, you ask these people if you could run, you have to ask these people, and as women, we're not in those. There are so many men's coffees and men's prayer groups, and that's when people get picked to run. I was very specifically told several times why I was not supposed to run, because I was not at that daggum coffee in the morning at Bodacious or at wherever. And so when you have women that are encouraged to make a difference, and they're great advocates like a Vicki and a Patty and a Michelle, you also have to have the storm of acceptance in that territory. And we don't really have a lot of that. There isn't really openings for us to sit at the table and to discuss that. And so how do you encourage that? I think that you do more mentoring in the community, more one-on-one encouragement, more coffees. I'm in a lot of organizations, and several of us do morning coffee, afternoon coffee, evening tea, evening wine, something. Just a consistent. It's going to take a lot of consistency in the messaging and in the conversation to change the culture in our community specifically. I was the very first woman elected to my seat, and it's 2021. And so I remember knocking thousands of doors, and hundreds of the women would say, why aren't you taking care of your kids? Who's cooking your dinner? The men there were several men that wrote my opponent very large checks, were like, you have no business being in office. You're supposed to be at home taking care of the kids. So it's easy for somebody, a young woman, to get discouraged if the older men and the people that run Pensacola are, not encouraging that. And we don't have women like ourselves that are holding their hand through it saying, no, girl, it's fine. And it is. I was not offended or upset when several friends said that I couldn't win. I just said, okay, well, I don't care. Like I told Quint, I said, I'm not here to win. I'm here to make a difference. And so I knew that no matter what I was going to do, whether I won or lost, I was going to make a difference. I was going to show the world that your voice matters. As a woman, as an advocate for children, as somebody that's not a divisive person, you don't have to be crazy to get something done. So, I mean, that's a very open question. There are so many things that you could say to that, but truly, it's some real one-on-one work. It's going to take a lot of work to encourage more women to run. And do you know how many messages I even get now telling me I need to dress this way, and you shouldn't be worried about wearing all that lipstick and having your hair down. You should be writing legislation. And I get stuff like that all the time. Sometimes it's posted on my private profile, and they literally comment on my posts, and I delete them as soon as I see them because I don't even engage in that. I don't want any women to see that. I want women to see a confident, strong woman that is just graciously walking in these steps and is open and willing to do what's right. That's really what I try to do. I don't have great days every day. And, ask me privately how I feel about a lot of the junk I have to deal with, and I'll be very honest with you. But I'm so concerned about the lack of encouragement of our youth altogether, not just young women, but youth in particular, because of the divisive nature of politics that we have currently. I focus more on showing that we can love and embrace one another than I do on the divisive issues. Not that I'll stand very firm on my beliefs in a heartbeat. I have no pun intended. I have no problem standing for my beliefs, but we have enough people screaming the horrible stuff, scaring away people like me of standing up and doing something good for whatever it is the cause, whether it be for children with autism, or it be for bullying in schools, or, the water, the fluoride. What a cool story that is that Vicki shares, and it's true. Like, we really need that fluoride in the water because we got some bad teeth. But I'm just so passionate about that. I mentor probably a dozen women currently, and I continue to do so. I always make time for women when they want to go have coffee and just chat. I always try to help build up other women and connect them to other resources. I tell people I'm a connector. I just connect people. I don't need credit. I don't need anything. But that's such a big question. I think that's why we're here tonight. And I mean, I do this every week with one person in the room, because eventually that one person is going to decide to take that leap and do something, whatever it is that they think is best. So that was very verbose, but hopefully it kind of shared how I feel.
Well, I'm glad you asked the question, and I love this organization. And I'll be a member for my life. I probably don't come to enough meetings, and I'm very sorry about that. But once you are elected, you're pretty busy. But I made some notes about this specific thing. We need more women in public office, period. I'm sure all the speakers here today will agree, when it comes to politics, it's a man's world. It is. And to me, women care more about the environment. They care more about the children. They care more about the infrastructure than men. I'm sorry, it's just what it is. And I'm happy that you have a camera here tonight, because you can share that with the people that aren't here. And technology is going to be your biggest help in getting more women, getting the message out, telling people that, yeah, politics is a dirty thing, but there's no better feeling in the world than doing the right thing for the people, except for having a child. And nothing will ever replace having a child, but doing the right thing for the people is pretty close. Pretty close when you do. And I have died on my sword for many, many things that people don't even know about. You have to make deals. You have to live in the man's world once you get there. And you will have to make deals every single day, that I will help with this, but I need your help with that, And so I've actually been, what I want to say is, the first time it happened, I felt like I was being threatened. If I didn't do this, then I wouldn't get this. And now I'm used to it. And so I've learned to say, okay, well, how bad do I want this transfer station? Really bad. So I'll stay out of that. That's not my job anyway, so I'll stay out of it. You can't let your feelings be hurt. Do not let your feelings be hurt. Just, I always say, be like a duck, Just let it roll off your back, the water roll off your back, the cursing roll off your back. And I can curse better than a lot of them. Okay, well,
But not tonight.
But even I get offended when I get on the phone and somebody starts, and I'm like, holy cow. My mama would wash his mouth out with soap. But so it is a man's world, but you're a woman, and we're wanting to be in it. So I guess everybody will agree. You have to put up with a lot, but you have to be like the duck. Let the water roll off up here, even though your feet underneath are just going crazy. You have to get used to that. So I think the satisfaction, again, though, that you feel when you do the right thing. I sleep like a baby, because I always try to do the right thing for the people. And I think as long as you do that, you will sleep like a baby. Even if you're making a deal underneath, that might not look good to you or but you understand why I'm doing it, and you understand why I'm doing it, and it's going to end up good for the people, because I'm going to get that transfer station one day, and then I'm going to sleep like a baby, because when they do open that recycle center or that transfer station, then that night you sleep really well.
Y'all taking notes? I think those are hints.
So we have about 15 minutes left. Oh, go ahead, Patty.
I just wanted to say, I just got elected for the 5th time. And this question was asked the first time I was elected in 2004. Why aren't more women involved in this? So, I think, I love what Michelle said about mentoring. And this organization, I know we have to find out how to get the people here.
Yes.
But maybe you do, like we used to say, you go to the people. Maybe we go to where they are. Go to League of Women Voters meetings. Go to anywhere where there's a group of women. I know I have a list of people I have suggested that they consider running for office. And, many of them will say, well, I've got kids at home, this kind of stuff. And I think the divisiveness right now in our nation also puts a pause on anybody running for office, probably. So, yeah, I wish there was something, but I think what we have to do is just continue to encourage those people out there that win or lose, you have put your voice out there, you have got your message across, whether you won or lost. Somebody heard you.
Right.
We got 10 minutes. What we do?
Well, we have 10 minutes. Are there any questions from the audience?
I have a question,
Of course, go, Anna.
of course. So you all know I'm very political and I've been involved in lots of campaigns. Dragged my kid with me to knocking on doors, doing all that kind of stuff. Patty, you just mentioned a little bit about the divisiveness. I think you both mentioned something about that. My friends who are younger moms and people who have not been involved in politics are now kind of getting their eyes opened, I think, because it's affecting their children, especially on school boards right now. There's a lot going on affecting kids with masks and this and that and the other thing. And they are very concerned. So I think maybe what my question is how to encourage them, and not just specifically school board, but to channel that energy. I don't expect them to get as involved as I am because I just am, I like it, so I do it. But, a lot of moms I know are talking about wanting to run for school board because of the issues that are going on today, or wanting new, fresh faces and people who understand them. So how do we go about encouraging them? You mentioned the one-on-one mentorship, which I think is really important. But as far as getting these people, instead of just being angry at everything, what do we say and what do we do in those mentorship moments, and in the moments that, I get all these phone calls with, hey, Anna, what's going on with such and such, and what's, I want to encourage them to do something positive. So what do you think about how we can continue to do that and use the divisiveness to turn it into something good?
I spend my day, as all of us do, answering phone calls with people who have various opinions about any particular topic. And one of the things that I always encourage people to do is take that first step to come to the mic and tell everybody what their issue is. Every one of our school board meetings, workshops, we have public forum. I put them in touch with people, but it's like Vicki said one time when she realized that when she was running, she was going to do A, B, C, D, and then she realized that by herself she couldn't do it. And so, I think that's another thing, reality is that you have to get to more than one board member. It's not just a person that you voted for. You've got to be sure you're talking to everybody. And so, when they come and then when they talk to me, I will help them figure out what is their avenue to making that change. And when they come to the board meeting, when I encourage them to come to a board meeting, it's because I think more than me need to hear what they have to say. Because oftentimes they're just talking to one person. They're just talking to you. They're not sharing with Michelle. They're not sharing with me. And I think that there is a fear in parents, and especially in the education arena, that if I speak out about a particular issue at a school, my child could suffer from that.
Yes.
I
And it happens
I unfortunately know that that is true, but I am a newspaper reporter. I never reveal my sources. And so when anybody calls me, whether they're teacher, principal, citizen, I will say someone called me, and I have been able to protect my sources because I believe that we have to listen, and those people can make a difference. You know, back in the Little House on the Prairie days, everybody came to the town hall meetings, and they took care of the education, they took care of the city, and they took care of everything. And we need more transparency, and we need more people taking an active role, whether they're elected or they're just sharing what their situation is.
I would say that one of the things that I did when I was not in office, but just trying to grow organizations that I was affiliated with, I found like-minded individuals and just screamed and yelled my mission a million times until they believed that that was the truth. And so in the instance where you have folks that you know would probably be good at being mentored or probably could use that push to learn how to use their voice effectively and as an advocate and maybe rolling into run for office, encourage them to participate in more than just what you're already doing. We have Pensacola Young Professionals. You've got Institute for Women in Politics. You've got the Republican Women's Caucus. You've got, I'm sure there's a Democrat caucus. You've got League of Women Voters, which I love those ladies. You've got all of these different things, and they need some young blood. But you have all of these different entities that you could encourage them. If they're upset about school stuff, then get them to a school board meeting. It's very boring, but do it. They're not near as long as the commission meetings. If it's about roads or bridges, get them to a county commission meeting. If it's about your garbage or water, get them to an ECUA. Actually, I would take it one step further and have them mentored by one of the women. There's no women on the county commission, but I'm sure we could find a woman that's, touching that. So I would say if it's a school board thing, I would call Patty. If it's and just say, hey, I've got this chickie. I'd love for you to have coffee with her, just chat. And Patty will never say no. Same thing with Vicki. Vicki will never say no. Michelle never says, I already know. I know these ladies. So I think just encouraging them and say, I'll go with you. Hey, let's go to this together. Let's go here and check this out. If it sucks, we can leave early. That's my caveat. I'm like, if it sucks, we'll leave early. And usually they like it. They'll stay and, learn from it. So, and then a lot of times if you get them engaged into those different organizations that might help empower them, one of two things is going to happen. They're going to realize that that's not even an issue at all. And, but they'll be empowered with their passion to find something that is, because they've got the energy and they're ready to use it. Or they solidify that messaging and understand it really is an important issue. And maybe they do need to keep going and keep going and keep going. And then all of a sudden their name's on a ballot, And so that's the kind of thing. I don't think we need to jump from, we don't have women running, let's just put you in there because you have passion. I think that you're onto something with your question. If you have these people that have this passion and this true knowledge of a certain ongoing that they would like to advocate for, then we just help them project that message however it is that would be useful for them and for the organization. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunities for us to do that. COVID has kind of eased up here in the community, so we're opening up a little bit more, and the opportunity is better. But certainly if you have women like that, tell them to call me. We'll have coffee. And girl, between me and you, we'll find somewhere for them to go.
I agree. And if they're passionate about being in politics, or they think they're passionate about being in politics, have them meet with a lot of people that are passionate about that. I fell in love with a little girl named Ashley McDonald. I'm big Republican. She was
here and she had to go pick up her husband.
Oh, okay. So I fell in love with this kid. She came to see me and wanted to talk and wanted some mentorship and talk. So we talked forever. And I don't know if I really wanted her to win, but when she didn't, I was kind of happy because I wanted to hire her, so I did. She was a fantastic young lady, and I was just enamored with her. And so when the day after she lost, I said, well, I'm really sorry you lost, but now I'm kind of glad. Can you come to work for me? She said yes, and so she's been there ever since. And we love her. Everybody loves her. But she would be, oh, God, this county would be so lucky to have someone like Ashley. She's just an incredible human being, period. And I'm happy to meet with anybody, and I don't really even care what party they are. If they're that passionate about the community, they need to be serving the community. So doesn't matter to me. And the Republican, I sit on the Republican Executive Committee. They get mad at me when I say that, I'm sure. But I do love Republicans, but I also just love people that are passionate about our community.
Same.
So we have like 3 minutes. Is there anything you would all like to say in closing? Or we'll just have you back for more knowledge next year. Well, I want to thank all of you for coming and taking time out of your evening, which I know is tough to do during the week. But I'm passionate about this, and I found it a particular challenge here in Pensacola. It is the South. I'm learning all kinds of things, but I'm a little frustrated that the good old boy network just has such a stranglehold. And there's some movement, but I just, IWP and League of Women Voters, and, you know, we're nonpartisan. We just want people that are passionate. We want to help them get elected. I know that I've been told repeatedly if we had some money and we would actually support women, we'd have to change who we are, but I think we can work toward that. But I don't see much other than doing some really good groundwork for 2022. Maggie and I met with 1 or 2 women that are running, and they don't think they need any help. So they're not interested. That's okay.
I would like to add that you mentioned the Good Old Boy Network. I think that they would encourage women running too, the ones that I've talked to. I think that it's just, it's not that they don't want women in office. We're just not in the conversation. So how do you insert yourself in the conversation? Well, I went to the men's coffees. I'm just going to tell you, I just showed up to I said, I don't care. I'm a woman. I'm showing up. And they respected me for showing up and not being a man. But just wanted to make sure, you know, I don't believe that they are trying to keep us out. I just think that we just don't know how to get in.
Well, and I think, because I'm not a Southerner, that's what I did in D.C. I went to all the meetings. I didn't wait for an invitation.
She was a Goldwater girl.
1,000 years ago, yes, I was. I was 12, because my parents are big Republicans. Yes, I have really, really darling, horrible pictures that hopefully you'll never see. I just think we have to encourage and educate and promote women to just go where they need to spread their message. And if that's a men's prayer group, no one's going to kick you out of a prayer group, maybe the coffee, I'm not sure. But I think being gracious and talk about issues and not personalities, it's just the way to go.
And I like that you said be gracious. As angry as you are about anything, and you can get, people can get, everybody's angry nowadays.
Yep.
I always start every conversation with respectfully, sir, or respectfully, ma'am. And it reminds me to be respectful. Even though I might not agree, you know, I need to hear them, they need to hear me, and we need to keep it respectful. So I think try to start every conversation with respectfully, ma'am, or respectfully, sir, and you'll get a lot further in life.
Well, but I think you also can, you know, we may not agree on everything, but I'm sure if we talk about this, we can find some common ground. And you can usually do that. But if you start out edgy, then they're already sort of resistant because they're expecting, you know, the hammer to drop. So, and it's not easy. I will say that right up front. It's a whole lot easier as you get older. I could have never done this 30 years ago because they'd say something insanely stupid that would just have my hair on fire.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to remark on the nonpartisan part, because as a school board member, we are nonpartisan. And you know, just like each one of you have a focus, what we have, a focus is child-centered. It's student-centered. And so whether you're Republican, Independent, Democrat, as long as you remember that while you may not agree with the way they're moving toward this object, it is the way they're doing it. And you keep in the back of your mind, they think that's in the best interest. We have a great school board right now that truly does not get in, well, most of us don't get into the politics of it, but it's about what are we doing for the students, and the political people out there are out there. And I think you said something about school boards, and so I see what's going on in other areas, and this is probably not even wood, but I believe that we have been very blessed in this community because we have had reasonable, rational people come to the podium and express both sides of the issue, and I think we have met with them with respect. So I think that that's the main thing is we are all servant leaders, and sometimes I think that's what women, how we express ourselves even better than the men do, is because we understand servant leadership means that you are going to serve the people who voted for you. You're not that is the most important part of the whole process, is you've got to be a servant leader.
I tell people all the time, I don't work for the ECUA. I work for the people.
Right.
I don't work for anybody but the people. So, yeah, you're right.
Well, again, Michelle, do you have some wisdom that you have to share?
Oh, no, Michelle is letting you
Again, I wanted to thank everybody for coming, and this was just invaluable to me, and I think we're going to get a lot of terrific information that we'll be sharing on our webpage, and I will invite you all back after the first of the year. So thank you, ladies. We're adjourned.